Thor is one of the most prominent figures in Norse mythology, but not many know that he had a wife. And he loved her very, very much. Although he was keen for a fight, he had a really soft spot for her, and should anything bad happen to her, he would do anything to avenge her. Sif, on the other hand, was fragile, beautiful and lovely creature. She took the most pride in her hair. It was lovely, voluminous, luscious golden hair. She saw them as her most prized possession. She took very good care of her hair. She would clean them and brush them out and do anything in her power to make them perfect. It was one of those lovely warm days in Asgard when Sif decided to wash her hair. She went down to the river, washed her hair thoroughly, and then left them to dry in the sun. When she was waiting for them to dry, and usually it took quite a while as the hair went down to her very ankles, she felt sleepy. Her head started dropping, and after a few minutes she fell asleep. But it was not just any kind of sleep. This sleep was induced by magic. It was actually Loki, the trickster god, who saw Sif and decided to play a prank. But she did not know that. She was sleeping peacefully under Loki's charm, and when she woke up several hours later, she noticed, to her horror, that all of her hair is gone. Her head was as bald as knee. She started crying. Not only did she lose her most prized possession, she was also ashamed to show herself to Thor. She ran quickly to her palace, found the darkest room and has hidden herself there. It was late afternoon when Thor came back home, and to his surprise, there was no one waiting for him. Usually, Sif would come and greet him the very moment he stepped his foot inside the palace, but this time, the palace seemed empty. It did surprise Thor a little bit, but it did not make him anxious. He thought she might have just stepped outside, so he went round to different palaces and visited different guards, asking if maybe his wife was there, but she was nowhere to be found. So he came back home and started calling for her, and after a few calls, he heard sobbing. So he called again and asked Sif to come greet him. She appeared in the room but remained in the shadow, and she said she would not bear him to look at her. He felt anger growing in him, because it was obvious to him that she is sad. He would do anything to make her happy. He would do anything to solve any problem she had. He begged for her to step into the light, but she refused. But after a while, she decided to show herself to him. To his horror, he saw that her head was covered in a scarf and there was no trace of her lovely golden hair. The anger boiled in him. He knew there and then who the perpetrator was. He knew who hurt his beloved wife Sif. He went straight to Odin, the All-Father, taking the sobbing Sif with him. Although she begged not to be taken in front of anyone, all he wanted was to make Loki pay for his sin. He showed Sif covered in a scarf to all the gods and told Odin that he's very much certain that this was caused by Loki. Once asked, Loki said that yes, he actually did that to her, and there was no other reason than just a cruel prank. Thor wanted to end him, just there in the middle of the palace, in front of other gods, but Odin stopped him. He said, "Son, I understand your anger, but if you bring an end to Loki here and now, he will not be able to right the wrong he did. You will not make him pay for how he hurt Sif." This calmed Thor a little bit, but he was still on verge of blowing up. Odin decided that Loki should find a solution to the problem that he has caused, but there was no easy solution. The charm that he put on Sif was irreversible. Her natural hair would never grow back. But Loki did not give up easily. He departed from Asgard, and he started looking for a solution. He traveled to the elves, he traveled to the giants, but no one could help him. So at some point, he decided to visit the dwarves. He knew how to talk to dwarves, so to his mind, this was his only way of solving the problem. He went down to the dwarven realm, and once he was there, he started looking at the items that the dwarf smiths were making. He praised them immensely, and again, the dwarves are great smiths. And then he sat down with a furrowed brow, not saying a word. The dwarves that were already happy for their beloved god to visit them noticed his despair and started asking questions. They wanted to know if there was any way they could help him, but Loki said, "No, Master Dwarves, unfortunately, I don't think anyone can help me. I don't think my problem can be solved." But the dwarves really wanted to help him, so they bugged him again and again, asking him to share his problems with them. When Loki felt that the time was right, he said that he is actually looking for a wig, but not just any wig, a wig made of pure gold that could attach to wearer's scalp and remain there forever, and a wig which hairs would grow just like natural hairs. He described Sif's natural hair in great detail, telling the dwarves the length, the exact color and shade and hue, and how voluminous they were, and then he waited. The dwarves gathered round and started deliberating. After a very short time, they came up to him again and said, "We can make a wig that you need." He smiled ever so gently, and that brought happiness to those little dwarven hearts, and they got straight to work. Loki remained in his place, but every now and again he would come up to the dwarves and praise and compliment them, and the more he praised and complimented, the harder they worked. Still, it took quite a while to create a magic wig. He waited and he waited long, and at last the waiting was over. He was presented with the perfect wig. Its hairs were just like Sif's. He thanked Master Dwarves immensely, and then he disappeared, leaving the dwarves happy that they could actually help their favorite god. Loki went straight back to Asgard, and once in Asgard, straight back to Odin's palace, where all the gods were gathered. He presented Sif with the wonderful magical wig. She was not certain at first, but after a moment, she decided to take off her scarf. The crowd of gods gasped at the sight of her glistening bald head, and then she put on the wig. Instantly, it attached itself to her scalp, and although it was made of pure gold, the hair seemed like they were actually natural. She thought the new hair are actually more beautiful than her natural ones, and she was so happy. She laughed and heart grew in Thor. Of course, he did not forgive Loki so easily. He still would give a lot to take his life, but he had no reason to do that now, right? But in his head, he thought there will come another time and Loki would give him yet another reason. And he smiled, looking at his beloved wife, who was happy again. And there you have the great secret of the wonder of Sif's hair. If you want to know more about the folklore and mythology of different nations, make sure to follow that channel.